There are actually 10 human rights treaty bodies, of course. We've only ratified 3 of them, and we're actually being reviewed by all 3 this year. These treaty bodies are important in that they allow people in our country to provide information on what we believe is the true situation on the ground. There's a preparation phase where the government will write a report saying how it's doing, in this case related to racial discrimination. They'll be looking at the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, known as CERD. So it's kind of an important thing to engage people. Otherwise, their job also is to make sure that CERD is implemented in countries. And if a country does ratify that, it takes action. So they will give recommendations, and they will definitely be as pointed as the information that we provide. And the recommendations also point out next steps that should be taken. So then it's our role then, again, we start the conversation, but then we also put pressure.
But I was in 9 different maximum security prisons before I was 22. I'm home 10 years now, and I can tell you that I would not be here today if I didn't go to school. I would not be here today if those other men in those cell blocks that everyone deemed as worthless didn't raise me and teach me the morals and values I needed to see when I got out, even though most of them are not coming out. We operate one of the few degree-granting college programs in the country. We have 5 programs for men and women in medium and maximum security prisons here in New York. We have 334 men and women currently enrolled in college programming. But the fact of the matter is, not a single one of our graduates went back to prison in the first 13 years. Now, if you take that times $54,000 a year, times the 60% national recidivism rate, we're saving New Yorkers millions of dollars a year for something they're not even paying for.
African Americans, and showing you're a living case of what that research brief talked about the same crime, and your co-defendants got 25 to life, and you got 8 to 24. And if there's ever an opportunity for this group to put a face on that particular issue, grounded in reality, Sean is a perfect example of that, that we shouldn't forget about.
Our main goal is to build that bridge between community and law enforcement. We are from the community. We also believe in that police officers should live in the community that they serve. We believe that law enforcement should reflect the community. If the community is 75% people of color, the police department should reflect that population. Throughout the United States, it doesn't happen. Within New York, especially in I live in Westchester County, within the next 30 years, you'll hardly see a black cop on the street. Why is that? Because of the relationship between young black men and women and the police department. It's a toxic relationship. That's why we have programs. It used to be, what do you do when you stop by the police? But because of so many young black men are being shot at, or killed by police, we changed it to, how do you survive police confrontation? To try to teach young kids what to do, what to say, and how to get home safe. What black cops go through in these police departments. What we go through on a daily basis, seeing the racism and discrimination and the civil rights violations. And the problem is, most of the people that they do it to are poor people. They can't afford a good lawyer.
I tell people all the time, I would rather invest money in a young person to come out and become a productive member of society than send them to prison and they learn how to become a better criminal. I used to travel, and I used to go to all these towns with a prison. And the whole economy is built around the prison.
That's right.
The whole economy. Right. I go into Delhi to get a sandwich, and all the sandwiches is named after inmates and correction officers. And it was eye-opening for me, and I consider myself sophisticated. You know, what I'm saying is, it is incumbent upon the system to make sure it has plenty of fuel to, it's political, it's economical, it's everything. And so we believe our ethos is that keep them out the system. You know what I mean? That's our ethos. Because once they're in it, the level of intervention that's necessary to hopefully help them get out of the system, become successful, goes up a lot.
As you can see from our flip charts, we had quite a discussion on many issues and a lot of frustration expressed because after all, we're dealing with education and kids and how people grow up. A key issue was that after sentencing, one should not have the burden of that sentence for the rest of the life, in terms of employment and social relations as well. And this is where actions that have been proposed recently by Senators Cory Booker and Rand Paul for expunging the records of persons who have previously been in prison for various kinds of crimes. It's a good thing. And similarly, the efforts recently undertaken or being underway in the New York State to encourage steps towards reintegration of former prisoners is very important to this whole sequence problem.
Major points was a focus on what is being done for the special needs of women as it relates to the education programs, transition programs, and reentry into the community, especially those who were involved in commercial sex work, and what are some of the implications, special implications that need to be addressed. Making vocational education market responsive. Most of the vocational education programs really produce people who don't have the skills that the market is looking for, and so it's important that it be market responsive. Another solution was to propose solution, engage businesses in training within the prisons for particular positions which they can then take on release from prison. That involves a sea change socialization of individuals to recognize the value of those in the prison system when they are released from the prison system as well.
And yet the American public never sees it. How can we get this publicized? How can this be, front page news in the New York Times, which I know it never is, but I mean, we ought to be hearing about this assessment of our performance on human rights.